Welcome to Design Voices Elevated, the video series featuring women design leaders. I've selected 10 stories to provide a nuanced perspective of how leaders are using design to grow meaningful change in organizations. I'm Marziargo and I'm going to be your host. This is episode number 9, featuring Alessandra Canella. Welcome everyone to Design Voices Elevated. Today I'm in London at the house of Alessandra. Hi Alessandra.
Ciao everybody.
So the first question that I usually ask is, what's your story? Tell us about you.
I have been doing this introduction lately. I'm a mother. I am a sister. I'm a wife. I'm an immigrant, so I moved to London in 2016. Prior to that, I was in Milan for 5 years. And prior to that, I was in Shanghai for a couple of years. I embarked the career I have now quite randomly, in an informed guess pathway, kind of thing, where basically I was doing furniture, Politecnico di Milano, and I was like, this is all well and good, but I don't enjoy so much designing the thing. I like better to actually understand why the trends, do the research. And then when I wanted to do the Master of Science, there was Product Service System Design offered at Politecnico. And this is interesting because it's taught in English and there's a double program degree in China. And that was the reason why I started PSSD. And then after PSSD, I started doing all the different kind of jobs. They were always included research in some kind of sorts. So Experiencia, then Continuum, and then FutureGov. And now I am the head of UX at Cazoo. And so I got here through the interest in designing and understanding why we are designing what we are designing, instead of I just wanted to design things. Ultimately, I don't think I'm a great designer myself. If it was an object or a UI, I don't think I'm the best person for that. But I'm very good at thinking more widely about why are we doing what we're doing? How does this fit with everything else we're doing? So that's
And how do you think your object of design has changed from one place to another? Like from Experiencia and then Continuum and then FutureGov and now Cazoo?
I think Experiencia, the object of design was very often somewhat between a digital and a physical product. With Continuum, it became more of a product service system. With FutureGov, it became public services, local, central government. And then with Cazoo, it became like an end-to-end experience, front and back. So it's not a linear pathway. The way my design objects has changed. Different reasons brought me here, but he has definitely evolved over time. And right now, I enjoy where I am, being able to craft the end-to-end experience for Cazoo with my team, of course. And I like the fact that we just don't focus on the customer front-facing experience, but even like on the back office experience.
What does that mean, the back office? What does it mean, like designing an experience or a service from a back-end perspective?
In the case of Cazoo, so one of the reasons why I'm at Cazoo is because the experience is quite complex to
Do you want to say a few words about what does Cazoo deliver?
Yeah, that's a good shout. So Cazoo is one of the industry key players when it comes to the UK market, and we sell used cars online. And so the typical journey online is the one you can imagine. So somebody goes online and buys a car online, and then it gets delivered, or they can go and pick it up in certain places. But there is a whole logistical point of view, and business side that has to be taken into account as well, because of course we buy the cars, so it's not a marketplace. We buy cars, so you need to find the right cars at the right time on which you can make the right metal margin. Once you then resell them, we need to buy them with a certain condition, so that then buying them, preparing them for them being sold again doesn't take us too long and it's not super expensive. And then there is the whole process to go through, so that they are actually, we image them, so it goes online, it goes on the website, and then the whole preparation of delivery, either at a CCC or at home. So there is a crew of customer service agents, delivery specialists that take care of that experience. And then, of course, all the accounting and inventory bit that we need to take care of as well, right? Because it's a massive item to take care of. We're not talking about like small rings, you know? So how do you keep track of your inventory, of where things are, of how do you maintain them, how do you make sure that we don't lose the keys of the car that then becomes impossible to sell, you know, all of that is what I would define the BizOps or back office side of the experience.
And what do you think is important to have design as part of this? Because I guess, you know, historically a company like Cazoo wouldn't necessarily have designers beyond someone that designs a website.
Because design to me is a problem-solving mindset. And when it comes to BizOps, there are plenty of problems to be solved. From why does it take so long for cars to be published? Or why do we lose the keys of cars? Or why the reconciliation of invoices is so complex and takes so long. So these are all problems that could be addressed from a business perspective, and they are addressed through a business perspective with business analysts and all of that. But equally, I think a designer can bring in a certain way of addressing the problem, of collecting the evidence about why a problem is a problem, or maybe why the problem is not actually a problem, and then they can bring creativity in order to think about the solution or the problem as well in a different way.
And in what way was that different in FutureGov? Because I guess that is very much public sector services. So what was the role of design there?
In my opinion, in my days at FutureGov, the role of design there was much more of a way of transforming the services that we were designing in order to make them more accessible to the public, so citizens, right? So why does it have to be so complex to access funding, for example, for a family, if a family has got children with educational needs, for example. So there is still like the business, the operational and business side to the service. But I think a lot of what I at least focused on back in the days was mainly the front experience, so the customer experience, the citizen experience.
Yeah, so you were basically taking a citizen perspective, like a city. You were actually representing the citizen in that conversation.
Yeah, I think so. I think there were other people in the team that were possibly more like engaging in the logistical side, like operational side of the services that we were designing. But at least, or maybe it's just how my maturity in being a designer has evolved. I definitely now see both sides of the thing, where before possibly just one side of it. That is how it's changed.
Can you tell me like one thing that changed everything in your career? One experience or relationship or person?
I think back in my early days experience, there was this way of saying that still stays with me. And that is a motto like that I keep thinking about whenever, I'm in conversations, and it's always useful to think about, are we just pushing tech for the sake of pushing tech? Is there other ways we could go about the problem we're trying to tackle? Or, for example, when we build a product now at Cazoo, do we necessarily need to build a thing, or can we just test it in a different way, maybe, with product support or customer service agents? I think an experience that really, I think there is a specific moment in my career. So when I moved from FutureGov to Cazoo, that was life transforming in a way. It took me ages to decide to move in-house and to be, again, an individual contributor, so a practitioner rather than a manager. And that took me months and months of pondering and sleepless nights. And now I understand why it took so long, but equally it was definitely one of these, sliding doors.
Why did it take so long?
I really love the team. I really love the mission of FutureGov. And everybody kept saying I was very good at managing. And then I was like, if I'm very good, why I don't enjoy it so much, And then...
Didn't you enjoy the managing part of it?
FutureGov, not so much in the end. I mean, it was pandemic days.
Okay.
So it was, being a mother, you really have so much going on, and taking care of a team sometimes it requires another effort of caring duty, and it felt like I didn't have enough energy for my team. Everybody was having different things happening in their life at the moment, and we were open enough to disclose, but that of course meant that sometimes I would carry some home wrongly, but I would. And then on top of that, I realized that overall I didn't enjoy being a manager of a team that in a consultancy, because I think managing a team in a consultancy is quite different from managing a team in-house, because in consultancy, we were at a point, I think, 15 service designers in the team, and everybody was off doing interesting projects. And I felt like I was working still a small percentage of my time, 40% on projects, but mine were boutique projects, while the ones they were working on, I felt like they were really addressing the meaty ones,
Yeah.
And I was in a way envious, because I was like, oh, you're really solving a juicy challenge there, interesting client, right? While for me, I was working more on the boutique projects, where were the ones that we were supposed to do very well so that we could get another project. And that was possibly less interesting for me. While now managing a team in-house is quite different, because you still get to manage the people, but then you do the work with the people and through the people. And so you need, at the beginning, I was like, okay, I'm going to just check on them and see if they're doing well, And that was very much of a how you doing 101. But then after listening to a podcast in which there was the CEO of Airbnb talking, and it was design leaders, very often managers become they just focus on the relationship, but they stop actually caring about the craft and the thing. I was like, you're right. And so I turned the one-to-ones into, okay, how you doing? Of course, how you finding it, anything you need support with. But then the second bit of the one-to-one is what is in discovery and what is in delivery. And so I would actually ask them to show me the work so that I can influence the work. And so that is completely different, because I'm not in a room, trying to craft the ideal service design practice and then working on projects that are not as interesting. I'm actually contributing to what we end up shipping, but through my people.
Okay, but are you only doing it at a one-to-one level, or do you also have a chance in a group setting to actually work together on something?
Yeah. We've got all sorts of settings. So there were one-to-ones, and then there are what we call functional syncs. So these are syncs with everybody's contributing to that specific thing. So for example, conversion. Everybody's contributing to conversion, everybody comes together, and there is a mixed group of stakeholders, designers, PMs, anybody who is contributing to that. And there is an important session where I can go in and say, why are we doing this? What's happening with that, Or should we review this other thing that we're doing, And that is definitely the forum where I can influence decisions more broadly, not just through the team.
Is there anything that you regret?
That it took me so long to move to in-house, because in-house is my thing. Yeah, 100%. If I think about how many years I worked, 13 years. I think I spent about 10 in consultancy and 3 in-house. And I knew, when you got the gut feeling inside you that there's something there for you, but for a number of reasons you don't go for it. Yeah. And I had the feeling that in-house was my thing. because you talk about the thing, but then you do the thing, right? Well, sometimes in consultancy, I felt like we talk so much about doing the thing, but when do we actually do the thing, you know?
Yeah.
Or you live with the thing that needs to be done, but then somebody else has to pick it up. And because your time is up, right? You have to move on as a consultant. You don't really have power to influence that.
Yeah.
So that is my regret.
Is there one learning is that you want, that you treasure, that you keep with you, and maybe that you mentioned to your team, or that you want to share with the people that are watching this?
I think that what you decide for yourself now doesn't have to stand true for yourself tomorrow.
So true.
Is for me the most important thing.
I agree.
Because like, what for me typically would be, I decided that I want to be a manager and that's it. I'm not going to go back, right? Some people would think that, how weird is that now she manages, you know? But why not?
Yeah.
When I decided that I didn't want to be a manager anymore, there was a specific snapshot of my life in that moment in time where I said, for these reasons, this is not for me now.
Yeah.
But then this opportunity came up with Cazoo now, and I was like, yeah, why not? You know, that is actually, I'm up for it now. So I think it's important not to keep yourself in check with what you said you would do, but keep yourself in check with your values and what you need in that specific moment is the most important thing to do.
How would you describe your leadership style today?
I would say collaborative, 100%. I tend to be quite transparent and directive about things that needs to be doing. So, for example, now there's a change and we know we want to focus on a specific thing. And I went to the team and said, look, this is what's happening. And therefore, I need you to do this thing here, right? And I try to put a reason behind why I'm asking the team to, focus the attention on something else, so that it doesn't feel like an out of the blue request. But I don't shy away from saying this is what we need to do and why we need to do it. Let's do it, you know. I don't think I have a word for my leadership style. And equally though, I care a lot about people setting boundaries because I've been there before. I didn't set my own boundaries and that didn't take me to any place that was good.
What does that mean? Can you talk a bit about that?
Don't work over hours. Don't put too much pressure. If you got 4 things on your plate, what are the key priorities and can you deprioritize the other ones? Give yourself time to get comfortable with the team or the matter you're trying to address. So this kind of stuff. Talk up, like if too much is too much, just say, I always say to the team, I take no as an answer. It's fine. And it's like, I would always stress that to the team that they don't have, this is a job as much as you enjoy. I want you to enjoy it and hopefully you enjoy it. Yeah. But it's not life. Life is something else that maybe awaits for you when you're done, right? So I really much want to foster that environment for which this is all well and good, but this is business. So take care of yourself.
Nice. My next question is there any career advice that was given to you that you would like to share with the people watching this?
Yes. So former in a previous role I had, every time I get a new manager and then they leave, I typically ask them, would you share career advice with me? And this person at that time told me, if you want to keep being a manager, remember that it's better to have a gap in your team rather than having the wrong person in the team. Because the wrong person in the team might destroy everything you have been building with the team, even from a psychological perspective, not only what the craft, what you're delivering. And I think it's great advice. As a manager, you're going to have to make decisions, unfortunately, on the team sometimes. And I took this to heart because it's not just about finding the right candidate for the right role, but is even how does the candidate work within the team? Is the candidate like empowering the kind of culture, reinforcing the kind of culture and environment you want for the team, or do they bring like another kind of vibe that doesn't actually fit? And so even though it's one of the hardest decisions to make when somebody doesn't fit in, and to have that discussion, maybe sometimes is actually double-sided, you know, you're not the only one thinking that way. Usually the other person might feel the same. But I just think it's important because you as a manager, I mean, in my case, I think that I help delivering the ultimate experience for the Cazoo customers, but I'm responsible of keeping my team in healthy environment and context. So making sure that we've got the right culture, the right vibe, the right environment for them to work with is another of my KPIs as a manager.
Yeah. What's the difference, in your opinion, between managing and leading?
I mean, a manager is not necessarily a leader.
Right. We all agree with that.
Yeah. So management can be just another thing that somebody does, like managing juniors, seniors, whatever, depending on your role. So it can be like simply like an HR related function. Leading is inspiring, showing the way, showing the direction, and showing how you are supposed to do something. So I think some people manage, and that they manage their team, but they're not leaders. They don't represent, for example, the practice beyond the practice per se. You know, when in a bigger setting, they wouldn't have a view or thoughts about how something should be done. Or sometimes I think like some leaders I don't consider personally them leaders because they just rely too much, lean on their team too much without having a clear way forward. While I think leaders are not afraid of necessarily having a view, a point of view, and sharing it like in a wider setting. But equally, I think a leader, I was saying to somebody, I think it's important that as part of your progression, you think about how you can help with the UX presence throughout the company. And this person told me, I don't talk when I don't have anything to say. And I'm like, welcome. Please, I agree with this behavior. I'm not saying that a leader equally, I don't think a leader necessarily has to say something all the time, but is somebody that keeps a constructive view on what is happening around them. What are, like, I think about like these functional settings that I told you about, where all the stakeholders involved with one specific thing come together and share what they're doing and how is it going. I think that is an important setting where a leader should actually share the point of view about, are we doing the right thing in the right way?
Can you share a bit like your analysis on how the design market is evolving right now? Like, where do you think, from your specific perspective, where are we with design in orgs? What's happening? It's been a bit messy.
just a little bit, just a tiny bit. I mean, of course, like the layoffs, inflated hiring for a lot of companies have been happening. And layoffs as a consequence for some of those. Equally, we know the startup world and the economic scene putting the whole funding mechanism and money raising mechanism completely like shaking it up, right? Is not what it was to be, what it used to be. So I think that is having quite an influence, of course, on design teams and UX teams. I'm not seeing any. I mean, no, I am seeing in some instances, companies that are still going for a strong growth route where they are doing a lot of hiring. And I just hope that is sustainable growth and not growth at all costs, just to show to investors. So in a way, I think that the consequences of how everything was running a couple of years ago have been showing up now, and these are the reasons why so many layoffs have happened. Equally though, I think that I hope that from now on we move into a more sustainable growth of design teams, so that we are really considerate about when we want them in the team, in the business, the value that they can bring, and we scale them responsibly rather than, you know, hundreds of people in a month, and then, you know, when things don't go well, then we just scale down.
And do you see any signal of that happening already or not?
I think some companies are definitely going into the lean, very lean model, with a smaller core group, maybe freelancers or contractors, and I find that more of a responsible choice compared to like hiring hundreds and then not being able to sustain it. So I think this is one of the possible directions, and unfortunately, there is this very lean design team structure. What happens is that everything that is not really core is not part of the team anymore. Think about user research and content design usually are the two ones. I mean, not to talk about service design, but service design never made it, you know, inside. So typically these are roles that it's easier to rely on contractors or not have them anymore and just embed these capabilities within the team. The other trend that I've been seeing, you asked about the role of design in an organization, right? And it's a thing that I've been talked a lot in my LinkedIn bubble. That, I mean, the businessization of design.
Yeah.
And I'm like, is this really a thing?
Okay, now tell me about it. I want to hear about it. Is it a thing?
I don't think. If you're a good designer and you were a good designer already, you were already talking business.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
And
I totally agree.
and so like possibly you weren't a good designer or you weren't thinking about it. And okay, fine, you can grow and think in business terms.
Yeah.
But it's normal, like everybody within the business has to show that they understand how business works, and you know, certain decision with business wise, we're going to be doing this next, or we're not going to be doing that anymore. You need to interpret it and absorb it. You know, if you are like customer service, okay, then what does it mean for us? If you are design team, okay, then what does it mean for us? And product, okay, what does it mean for us, right? If you don't do that translation, why are you in business? You don't understand how a business operates, right? Yeah. And so I don't agree with this. I don't think it's a trend. I think it was a requirement. We might have not got it on our papers.
You didn't receive the memo.
Yeah, you didn't receive the memo. Yeah, seriously. Yeah, I think so. You didn't get it.
What do you think are interesting places for designers right now? I mean, I know there are a lot of people out there who have been recently through rounds of layoff that are starting to rethink their position and their practice and where to go. What do you see moving in an interesting way right now?
There's a lot of health tech that's happening at the moment, and a lot of edu tech that's happening as well. Interesting bits, interesting things to work on, interesting challenges, I think. A friend of mine told me, she works in health tech, and she told me, don't forget that even though if health tech, it's always business. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Because like otherwise you get into this life motive of, oh, I'm doing something for good, you know. No,
they're still doing it for the money. Yeah.
It's all about the money still. But I think there's maybe like another way of looking at what you're doing, if it's health related or educational related, that might like create an additional drive for you to do interesting things. These are my top two industries that I keep an eye on.
Last question. One hope for the future.
I wanted to say less ambiguity and more certainty. But unfortunately, I don't think that's going to happen.
Hard.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. And I think the hope is that I get goosebumps as I say this, because I really need to. This would be very good for me too. To just embrace the fact that ambiguity is going to stay around. And we're not going to be able to think of a job like for years. And everything is much more volatile. And the solution is not necessarily to jump from one company to the other, but it's just to learn to embrace it. And so that is my hope for the future.
Thank you very much for being with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Hope you enjoyed it. Ciao.
If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your network. And if you would like to follow and support my work, please subscribe at designmavericks.substack.com. See you next week.